All right. I think I gotta, sorry, I forgot to do something real quick here. Let me do it as folks load in. What's up, everybody? What's up? It looks like we're live. I need to see it. I need to make sure because, you know, no producer on site here. It's all just me. So let me just clear everything out here. All right. Okay. And let me just make sure that we are good. Up, Rockfin, you're awake. I think Rockfin might have beat the YouTube actually. Up, YouTube's here. Okay, we got everybody. Oh man, we're back. What is up? How are you? What's up, everybody? Man, it's been a minute. It's been a minute. What's up, Jesus? I'll let some folks load in here. Um, Good to see everybody. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Well, let me go ahead and Voltaire, what's up? Edwin, what's up? Jesus, what's up? Thanks for being here. Am I staying dry? Yes, I am. Yes, I am, actually. It has been a little hard, Edwin. Is it raining near you? It's been raining a lot. Had to drive yesterday across town, and it's like, man, driving in the rain in LA is something. What's up, Emmy? What's up, Al? Happy New Year. Good to see everybody. What's up, Voltaire? I'll be talking more about that once we officially get started here. I'll give everyone an update on everything. Um, well, let's go ahead. Let's jump right into it. We are live on all the platforms. What's up, everybody? Good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Get Your News On with Ron 2023. Ah! That was a weird little there. Um, it's a new year. We are back. So I took a longer holiday break than usual. And as long as I've been doing this show, I usually take a break between the winter holiday and January. I usually take a little break in there. This one was a little longer than usual. Part of it was because of my show schedule, and part of it was, as you guys probably already know, I was subbing over at Status Quo for a while. I was filling in for Jordan while he was on paternity leave. So between doing that and Get Your News On with Ron, that was a lot of politicking. That was a lot of news and politicking, and it did not give me much time for other projects. And it was just a lot of news and politicking, which was fun. I mean, it was a lot of fun, but that was part of the reason why I kind of made the break on Get Your News On with Ron a little longer. And actually, as timing would have it, folks, in fact, I'm announcing this here first. My fill-in tenure at Status Quo has come to an end. Jordan Cheriton will be returning to Status Quo starting tomorrow. So I'll still be there on Thursdays. Thursdays is my regular day. Tina Desiree Berg and I co-host a show over on Status Quo on Thursdays. That's still continuing like normal, but my fill-in schedule of doing Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, that is no longer happening. So it ended up kind of like completely working out ideal timing wise. Like I had a. I planned on bringing Get Your News On with Ron back today, which is obviously happening. Here we are. And Jordan Cheriton also decided he was coming back. It wasn't planned that way in advance. You would think maybe it was, but it totally wasn't. But it worked out that way. So anyway, that's that. And good to be back. We have a lot to talk about, so I'm going to get right into it. And then I'll be doing a little more housekeeping here at the end. And then, of course, for those of you who are patrons or just want to stick around live, directly after this stream, I do the patron / Rockfin Premium stream. That stream is open to everybody. By all means, tune in. But the replay is only available on Patreon and Rockfin Premium. And if you want to support this show on the sustainability end, the best way to do it is become a patron. For a give what you can level, you get the replays of all patron streams, and that's a more casual, fun, chatty stream. You also get to watch my short film Loner that I'm going to be talking about more. You get to watch my performance as Lucian the Satirist, and you get all kinds of bonus content not available anywhere else for a give what you can level. All right. So let's get into it. We have a lot to talk about because it's been a break. Hope you had a wonderful holiday, by the way. Hope you're having a good 23 so far. And man, we got a lot. So, first of all, we're going to be talking about online surveillance. And by the way, a new target customer for the surveillance world, landlords. We're going to be jumping into that. Also, little bit of good news on the net neutrality front, the quest for a free and open internet. Gigi Stone has been renominated. We're going to jump into that and what it means and where we're at. Keenan Anderson, who was murdered by the LAPD. We're going to be talking about that some. That's a very wow. Wow is all. They had a visual yesterday for him, but we're going to be jumping into all that. And we got a little bit of good news. It's not all, we got a little bit of good news concerning the band Pearl Jam and skate parks. We're going to be jumping into that. And our lead story today, the main story today that we'll be getting at later, is the whole Northwest, the Glacier Northwest versus the Teamsters. This is a case that the Supreme Court is hearing that could really crush the ability to strike. This is a huge Supreme Court case that's not getting very much coverage, but depending on what the Supreme Court does here, and it looks like they're going to be anti-worker because they are an anti-worker Supreme Court, this could really crush the ability to strike, and we're going to be unpacking that too as well. But let's start with online surveillance, or actually, this is just more general surveillance. But let's start with the surveillance space. So this is interesting. There's been a couple things in particular that have stuck out thus far in 2023, even though it's still a very new year. One of them, at the CES show in Las Vegas, there is a toilet that spies on you, kind of. Here's the product. Basically, you can pee on this thing, and when you pee on it, it gives you the levels of your vitamins and your hormonal levels. And it will then recommend vitamins you should maybe take or, different workouts you could do to get your levels at a desirable place. So you might be thinking, well, that sounds kind of convenient. Actually, I just pee on something, tells me where my levels are at. Well, why is this problematic? Well, here's the thing. This service or product also can differentiate between users. So it can ID you by your urine, PID, if you will. And here's another thing. The company is totally, which I believe they're called Withings or something like that. The company is totally willing to give any information to law enforcement. What might they give to law enforcement? Well, these days, if you are seeking out an abortion in a post Roe v. Wade world, your urine analysis could be used as criminal evidence against you. Let's say there was some hormonal evidence that you are with child, and then you are no longer with child because you needed to seek out an abortion, and you did not have the right to do that where you're at. That evidence could be used against you in court. It could also be used for just general identification purposes. And this company has made it very clear they will comply with law enforcement under any circumstance. So basically, it's very concerning as far as abortion rights just goes. And as Goldilocks here points out in the chat, it's pretty freaking creepy. It's pretty freaking creepy. So that's a fun one that's going on in the world. But here's another one. Surveillance companies have a new target customer. Who is that target customer, you ask? Well, landlords. Check this out. This is from Vice. And this is real. This is not an onion piece. Meet the spy tech companies helping landlords evict people. So some renters may savor the convenience of smart home technologies like keyless entry and internet-connected doorbell cameras, but tech companies are increasingly selling these solutions to landlords for a more nefarious purpose, spying on tenants in order to evict them or raise their rent. So check it out. These are actual advertisements that surveillance companies are doing towards landlords. Check it out. You can raise rents in New York City. This was a promotional email. And this was a pitch from a company called Timmon, a tech company that makes surveillance systems for apartments building. Timmon's sales pitch proposes a solution to a frustration for many New York City landlords who have tenants living in older apartments that are protected by rent control. Ugh, gross. The company email suggests a workaround. 3 simple steps to re-regulate a unit. This is something that someone actually published. 3 simple steps to re-regulate a unit. First, you need to catch the tenant breaking a law or violating their lease, such as having unapproved subletters or loud parties. So basically, they're saying, put our cameras around so you can spy on your tenant and try to find them doing something they're not allowed to do. Like maybe like they're having a cigarette in the doorway and they're not allowed to smoke in the building or something like that. Maybe they're having illegal subletters, which how would you prove that? How would you prove like they're not just having friends over or something like that? So anyway, they're saying first you catch them breaking a law with our intrusive cameras, then you vacate them and merge their former apartment with one next door or above or below, creating a quote new unit that's not eligible for rent protections. Combine a 950 a month studio and a 1400 a month one bedroom into a 4200 a month deregulated two bedroom, the email enticed. So if it's a different unit, it's not eligible for rent control. It's based on the unit, or at least that's how it works in New York City. I believe here in Los Angeles, it's based on the age of the building. I'm pretty certain. I don't know like all the ins and outs of that, but I'm pretty certain that if the building is under a certain year, it is automatically under rent control if it falls into LA city jurisdiction. And then of course, but of course it's different because there's other places that are sort of just governed by their own. Like when I lived in Pasadena, the rules in LA did not apply to Pasadena. Pasadena was its own city by technicality. So it's there's a lot of bells and whistles going on here is my point. But apparently in New York, if you make a new unit, it's not eligible for rent control. So they're literally advertising to landlords, telling them to do this. Housing advocates and surveillance experts say the practice of adopting surveillance technology against renters has become increasingly common at a time when Black and Latino renters are disproportionately displaced by gentrification. No one has exact numbers, but we've seen growing amounts of surveillance on buildings big and small. Albert Fox-Khan, the executive director of the Surveillance Technology Oversight Project, told Motherboard. Khan says that some examples include facial recognition and biometrics, automatic noise, automated noise and gunshot detection devices, and other systems that attempt to measure activity or movement inside private residencies. For me, it's really alarming because when you see the sales pitch for some of these products, it's far more invasive than seeing who's at the front door. Which, by the way, is already invasive enough because if you have an Amazon Ring, they're another company, they'll give any information to law enforcement. They make that clear. So this is just another, for instance, of surveillance being weaponized against poor people and against working people in general. This is, landlords want to profit as much as they can. They want to make everything market rent rate. They hate rent control. So here's a way for them to try to get people out of buildings, basically. And there's always loopholes for landlords, by the way. Just so you know that in the United States, there are always loopholes for landlords, even during the pandemic. During the shutdown, the lockdown, there were still ways they could evict people. There were ways that landlords, even though there was a moratorium on evictions, there was a moratorium on, you couldn't kick somebody out if they couldn't pay rent. Moratorium on evictions. Yeah, I said it the first time, but there was a moratorium on that. But there were still loopholes where landlords could have things in place where they could basically still evict you. Something like a landlord's lien. What is that? That's something that happens in a lot of lease agreements where basically if you're not paying rent, if you're not able to pay rent, if there's some reason that the landlord can't evict you, okay, well, they can't technically evict you. But if they have something like a landlord's lien, what they might be able to do, and this happened a lot during the lockdown, they can basically confiscate your stuff until you leave. They can just go in and take your stuff until you vacate their premises. So, yeah. So this is just another weapon for landlords to, get as much profit as they can and throw people out on the streets. So, staying in the tech space for a little bit, Gigi Stone has been renominated. Now, quick refresher for anyone who might not always tune into this show. Gigi Stone was Biden's nominee for FCC. The FCC has been in a 2-2 gridlock, 2 pro-net neutrality folks, 2 anti-net neutrality folks, since Joe Biden took office. He appointed Gigi Stone. I don't think he really wanted to appoint a pro-net neutrality FCC figure. I don't think he cared. But the Bernie Biden task force made Joe Biden promise that he would appoint a pro net neutrality FCC commissioner. So he kept that promise. To be fair, Joe Biden did keep that promise. But for 2 years and counting, Gigi Stone was not confirmed to the FCC. Now, this was historic. Donald Trump's picks took about a couple weeks, just for reference. And most picks, usually that's what they take. And within a couple weeks, they're in the FCC. Gigi Stone, it's been 2 years and counting. Well, why? Well, first of all, Biden doesn't care that much. So he's not using the bully pulpit to put any pressure on anyone. Second of all, you got some holdouts for her. There's some Republicans who don't like her. And Joe Manchin also said he won't vote for her. And you got Chuck Schumer over in the Senate, who has a ton of conflicts of interest when it comes to big tech. So he probably doesn't want to bring her up for approval much either. And the other big thing that we're going to jump into now, there's a huge right-wing smear campaign against Gigi Stone, which is ironic because there's actually some folks on the right who like her. But there's this big right-wing smear campaign being led by Fox News against Gigi Stone. Now, Gigi Stone is beyond qualified to be an FCC commissioner. She's been doing this work in the public space for over 30 years. She's on the right side of the right issues. She's pro net neutrality. She is just infinitely qualified for this position, yet it has taken 2 years and counting. And here's what the right-wing smears of her consist of. So first it was, she tweeted something critical of Fox News once, and everyone's freaking out. They're like, oh, she's not a big fan of Fox News, as if that's some crazy, unique thing to not be a big fan of Fox News. You know, the only people who are fans of Fox News, the people who watch it, which are mostly people who don't realize there are choices. So, but check this out. So this is from Fox News, and this was published on January 8th. So shortly after Gigi Stone was renominated, they started the smear campaigns up again. So here's what this says. Biden's FCC nominee, Gigi Stone, shared tweet calling Trump a raggedy white supremacist president. President Biden's pick for an open seat on the FCC once shared a tweet labeling former President Donald Trump a raggedy white supremacist. In June of 2020, Gigi Stone retweeted a post from actress Issa Rae characterizing the former president as a white supremacist amid the unrest caused by the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. Rae's tweet added that Trump would prefer to kill everybody than to make progress on racial justice issues. So here's what the tweet said verbatim. Your raggedy white supremacist president and his cowardly enablers would rather kill everybody than stop killing black people. So Gigi Stone allegedly shared that tweet, and that's what they're freaking out about. You know, maybe instead of freaking out at Gigi Stone for sharing this tweet that is accurate, you should be outraged that police are still killing black people en masse and still killing innocent people en masse. Maybe that should offend you a little bit more. And by a little bit more, I mean that should be what offends you. Gigi Stone sharing a tweet about Donald Trump, who, calling Donald Trump a white supremacist is not even a stretch. I mean, if he is not a white supremacist himself, he is at the very, very, very least sympathetic to white supremacy. Because let's be honest, that dude is perpetually online. He knows that he's got that stuff in his fan base. He knows big time. He's got Nazis in his fan base. He's got white supremacists in his fan base. And he doesn't give a hoot. In fact, he panders to them. There's been plenty of, for instances, of Trump sharing white supremacist and white supremacist adjacent stuff. So if we want to look at Gigi Stone's Twitter history, now that's how they should respond to that. They'd be like, okay, you want to look at Gigi Stone's Twitter history where she allegedly shared a tweet calling Donald Trump a white supremacist. Well, let's look at Donald Trump's social media history and see if one can reasonably determine that that's sort of a fair thing to label him as. Because, I mean, if you go through Trump's social media history, just when he was on Twitter and the stuff he does over Truth Social or whatever the hell it's called, you're going to find plenty of stuff where, okay, it's fair to come to the conclusion this guy's a white supremacist. You're going to find plenty. So that's how they should respond to this. But point being, the right-wing smear campaigns have already started against her. So please, I encourage everyone, go to battleforthenet.com. That's battleforthenet.com and demand that they take action and approve Gigi Stone right away. Despite all these smears, the votes are there. The votes are there. So please, again, battleforthenet.com. So speaking of police murdering people, this is a tough one. And this happened right here in Los Angeles. Let me go ahead and close out of this. This is from The Guardian. Teacher and cousin of Black Lives Matter founder was tased to death by the LAPD. This happened this week. He needed help and was killed. A cousin of Black Lives Matter co-founder Patrice Cullors was killed by the Los Angeles police after he got in a traffic accident and officers showed up, repeatedly tased him, and restrained him in the middle of the street. Footage from the January 3rd encounter released on Wednesday showed that Keenan Anderson, a 31-year-old high school teacher and father, was begging for help as multiple officers held him down and at one point, Keenan Anderson said this, "They're trying to George Floyd me." One officer had his elbow on Anderson's neck while he was laying down before another tased him for roughly 30 seconds straight, before pausing and tasing him again for 5 more seconds. Here's what Cullors, the co-founder of Black Lives Matter, had to say about this. "My cousin was asking for help and he didn't receive it. He was killed. Nobody deserves to die in fear, panicking and scared for their life. My cousin was scared for his life. He spent the last 10 years witnessing a movement challenging the killing of Black people. He knew what was at stake, and he was trying to protect himself. No one was willing to protect him." So you can see this video online. I'm not going to play the video today. And the reason is I've watched it before, and I'm sure a lot of you have already seen it by now. The video is incredibly disturbing to watch, because you literally witness a murder. I mean, you watch them murder this man, and this guy is begging for his life. He's not resisting. He's not fighting. He is on the ground. Someone's pummeling him on the ground. A cop has their elbow in him, so he's moving around because he's being pummeled. But whenever he moves, they tase him again. And in that situation, you can't help not moving. An officer is on top of you. So they're basically forcing him into a situation where he has to move his body. But whenever he does it, they tase him. And he's begging for his life because he knows what they're doing. He realizes what they're doing to him. So it's brutal to watch. Now, LA Mayor Karen Bass has released some rhetoric around this that she's not going to tolerate excessive force. We'll see what happens here. Karen Bass is no friend to people who want to hold police accountable. Karen Bass does not support defunding the police. Karen Bass wants to increase police funding. So we'll see what happens. You know, so far, Karen Bass as a mayor has delivered about the way I expected. She'll say some nice things, but actions speak louder than words. You know, there's been a few things that she's indicated that are a step in a better direction. She's trying to start an initiative that would send mental health professionals in a situation like this instead of armed police officers. Okay, that's definitely a step in a better direction, but police officers, it looks like they'll show up too in this new idea. So who's to say that they'll actually follow protocol? They might just tase somebody to death and then, you know, and then they'll call the mental health professional or something like that. So, you know, the reason I really, and some of you may have already heard me talk about this on Status Coup when we covered this on Status Coup this week, but in 2013, basically, I had the same experience Keenan Anderson had, or very similar, and I'm here to talk about it. In 2013, I was in a very bad car accident. Some of you, I may have talked about it before. Some of you may have heard me talk about it. I was sideswiped, and I was sent across a highway, and then my car hit the median. And the reason I bring this up is because I can tell you that when you are in an accident, like especially a significant accident, it is very common for you to be in a state of shock, basically, where you're very like you just don't have it together. And that was what happened to me. I got out of the car and I mean, I could have gotten hit at any point. I mean, I didn't know what to do. Like, and I just started basically yelling for help. I didn't know what to do. And I was in a state of panic. That's very common. That's what Keenan Anderson was going through. He was in an accident. He didn't know what was going on. He needed help and he wanted help. And when the police came, he sensed another element of danger because they are the police and he is a black man in the United States. So he wanted to be in a place where everybody could see. He wanted to be in a place where there were witnesses, and that's what he expressed. They didn't really like that. Things escalated from there. So in my accident, when I was also in a very panicked state, I didn't have to worry about that the way he did. That thought didn't go through my head that, oh, I need to be in a public viewing space because cops are around me. But I was also in a very panicked state as he was. And in my panic state, the cop did not start tasing me. The cop did not put me on the ground and get on top of me while another officer tased me. That's not what happened to me. Basically, I was able to calm myself. And I basically what snapped me out of it, and again, I don't remember this like totally vividly. Again, I mean, this was a pretty traumatic thing. I'm sure some of it I've just repressed and don't remember fully. But I said, look, the cop at one point said to me, because by the way, I mean, this cop wasn't very like sympathetic either. It's not like he was just like, it's going to be okay. I mean, none of that. But the cop basically said, sir, if you're not able to calm yourself, we're going to have to put you in an ambulance. And I knew that I could not afford an ambulance ride. Yeah, good old USA. So I just focused on my breathing. I knew I was like, I think if I focus on my breathing, that'll help. And I was able to just calm myself. And then I was able to just say, I'm okay. And, they took down some information, stuff like that. But it's just, my point is that it's not uncommon for somebody to be in a state of shock after an accident like that. And you're certainly not helping the situation by scaring them further and then tasing them to death. That's not how you handle something like that. There should be a mental health professional that understands, okay, someone in this situation, this is what they're going through. This is the state of panic they're probably in. This is how you can try to avoid a panic attack if you can. This is how you know that a panic attack's coming on. There are people who specialize in this type of work. They understand it. They understand how a trauma like a car accident, how someone processes that. You know what I mean? I'm not an expert in that field. Neither is some cop. And do you know what it takes to tase a person to death? And here's why I feel the way I do about law enforcement. When you look at the way law enforcement is conducted in this country, it is not meant to serve and protect. It is meant to uphold and brutalize. That's the way the system works. So I'll stay in my city, Los Angeles, and use it as an example. We do these things in Los Angeles, and it happens in cities all over the country, and they're called sweeps. And what these sweeps are is they go to a bunch of an encampment where a bunch of houseless people are. They violently force them out of where they live, and then they brutalize them or worse. So think about what it takes to ask a human being to do that. To ask a human being, so hey, especially during the wintertime where it's freaking cold. I mean, keep in mind, it gets cold in LA in the winter. A lot of people die from hypothermia in Los Angeles. But think about what it takes to ask a human being to go and displace a person, to displace another human being who has nothing, who has so little, to go and destroy what little they have. They're already completely broken. They're homeless. They're struggling. You don't know what their situation is. Maybe they're schizophrenic. Maybe like who knows? And you're supposed to go there and you're supposed to violently remove them and you're supposed to destroy what little they have. Most people wouldn't be able to do that. Most people would be like, I can't do that. So those people would never be cops in a million years. Then there's some people who think, okay, this is a really brutal job, but somebody's got to do it. And I guess, and those people, they look around and they think, there's got to be a better way. There's no way. This isn't what I signed up for. This isn't what being an officer of the law is supposed to be like. And those people, they get pushed out of law enforcement real quick. They don't last long. So that leaves a third type of people, a third type of person. And that's the type of person who seeks out that type of work. That's the type of person who wants to hurt people, who wants to tase somebody to death, who wants to brutalize a homeless person and destroy what little they have, who wants a badge and a gun and a license to kill with no consequence whatsoever. And those are the types of people who thrive as police officers. That's just the reality of it. Does everybody join the police force with evil intentions? I certainly hope not, but I can tell you the ones that don't, most of the time, they don't last long. They don't last long. And we have a police force that has been infiltrated by the KKK. That's well documented. That's been infiltrated by neo-Nazis. They see white supremacist groups as allies and friendlies. They even call them friendlies. We have documented evidence of that. There's other affiliated gangs with police forces. And by the way, here in Los Angeles, they've already killed 3 people so far this year. They've murdered 3 people already, Keenan Anderson being among them. This guy was a 31-year-old English teacher, spent his time helping children, was an activist, was a relative of the Black Lives Matter co-founder, which you can't help but wonder. I mean, and I don't have any evidence of this. I'm not claiming this, but I can't help but wonder, did one of the officers know who he was? And did that maybe play a role in how they treated him? I don't know. I'm not claiming that because I have no evidence of it. But, I mean, wow. So, and that's why when it comes to police, I think defunding the police does not go far enough. I think we need to abolish the entire system and start over. And I know that, when you say abolish the police, that scares a lot of people because they don't really, it's kind of hard to unpack what you really mean by that. And what I really mean by that is not, oh, we should have no law enforcement in our life. There shouldn't be any law and order at all. I wish we could live in that world, but I do think that, we need to have law and order in a society. However, what we have with our police is not law and order. Again, it is uphold and brutalize. That's what the system is. It's a system that encourages heartless killers, quite frankly, instead of people who actually do want to serve and protect. And I wrote an entire piece on what I would do if I was in charge of, what it means to have police in a society. It's called New Police Please. You can find it over on my Substack, romflacone.substack.com. So I wrote extensively about what I would replace it with, but I do think it needs to just be replaced completely. Like we can't continue this. Like look at what this system does. And we keep going through these stories time and time again of another person murdered by police. It's to the point where there was one time, and there's always propaganda too, by the way. The propaganda here was that he tried to mess with somebody else's car. He did something to someone else's car. Not even clear what exactly he did, but apparently, like, he was in a state of panic and he bothered someone else's car. So that justified. And apparently he tested positive for cannabis. And which, by the way, another thing in 2013, if they would have done a test on me, I likely would have tested positive for cannabis too. I'm pretty sure, like, I had smoked pot within 2 weeks of my car accident. I'm pretty sure. I certainly wasn't high while I was driving because my accident actually wasn't my fault. It was the other person's fault. But so it's like there's always these ridiculous propaganda excuses. And I remember a little over a year ago, I was talking about this one cop murder, and somebody responded with their propaganda. They were responding with an earlier police murder. And I'm like, you don't even have your propaganda straight. I'm talking about the murder that happened in Pasadena. You're talking about a different one because these things happen so often we can't keep track of them. We can't even keep track of them. This is not a system that can be reformed. Maybe there was a chance for reform about 30 freaking years ago. Maybe. I don't know for sure, but maybe. That ship has long sailed. We can't reform this. We need to freaking start over. And how do you go about doing that? Well, that's a big question, but I can tell you this much. You got to start one community at a time. So it's something that you can start on right in your own community. And, when I read this story, of course, I thought about my accident in 2013. And of course, I wondered, which, you always got to wonder this, like, would I have had a much different experience if I was not white? There's a very good chance I would have. A very, very good chance I would have. There's also a chance I might not be here right now. Because again, I mean, my situation, it sounds pretty much the same to his. I was in a state of panic. I was just in a bad accident. I needed help, but I was panicked. I was in a state of shock. That's very common. There should have been a health professional on the scene for me. There should have been a health professional on the scene for Keenan Anderson. It shouldn't have been some cop scaring the shit out of the guy and then tasing him to death. And there was a visual forum yesterday here in Los Angeles. I unfortunately was unable to attend, but despite the rain, because it rained like hell here yesterday, but despite the rain, it was a very well attended visual. And again, it's like these things happen time and time again. The outrage cycle lasts for about 48 hours, and then we just continue this ridiculous system. And that's how it goes when it comes to cops systemically murdering black people. That's how it goes when it comes to school shootings. We just have a 48-hour period of outrage, and then we move on. I can't tell you in the time I've been doing Get Your News On with Ron and doing other shows and whatnot. I have no idea how many shootings I've talked about at this point. I don't know. I've lost count. I lost count a long time ago. Police murders, shootings. I couldn't even try to tell you how many. And nothing changes. In fact, it just gets worse. So we're going to go to the main story today. And this has to do with the Glacier Northwest and the Teamsters. So the concrete workers in Seattle had a pretty successful strike. They shut down billions of dollars in development. And they, basically the company had to come to the table with them real quick. But now the company has reacted and has retaliated for the strikes that they've done over the years. And what they're trying to do, and it got up to the Supreme Court, is they're trying to say that the Teamsters they engaged in egregious behavior. And the egregious behavior that they engaged in was they did not take care of the cement when they went on strike. Now, they're under no obligation to really do this at all when they're on strike. And here's the other ironic piece here. What the Teamsters did was they drove their vehicles back to the facilities, the headquarters, and they left the cement trucks running. Now, by leaving the cement trucks running, they were helping preserve the cement for longer. So they basically did that in an act of good faith. They didn't have to do that. They could have just stopped their trucks and still been well within their rights. But they left the trucks running anyway in an act of good faith. And nonetheless, here's how the company repays them. So now the Supreme Court is hearing this case. Now, if the Supreme Court rules in favor of the companies, which there's a good chance they will, this is really going to gut one's ability to strike, because now not only are you worried about everything that's involved with going on strike in the first place, but you're worried that the company is going to be able to sue you for any damages they incur. That's what this is all about. The company is saying we should be able to sue them for the cement that we lost. Now, here's the thing. You have the right to strike as a United States citizen. Like, that's something that, at least in words, we have the right to strike. And when we have the right to strike, obviously we're trying to commit economic harm to the company. We're trying to say, hey, you need our labor. Without it, your company suffers. So we're going to withhold our labor because you're not treating us right. And you've given us no choice. You won't negotiate. You won't meet us halfway or anyway. You won't meet us at all. So we got to go on strike. So the cement workers were well within their rights to just say, hey, there's your cement. See you later. We left it running as a gesture of goodwill. We didn't even have to do that, but we did. Peace. Well within their rights. But what the company's trying to say is like, no. We should be able to go after them for these damages. Now, the Supreme Court has no business ruling on this, by the way. What they're trying to claim is that egregious behavior, quote unquote, happened. Because even though you have the right to strike, well, you don't have the right to egregious behavior. Well, what would egregious behavior be in this case? All right, well let's use the cement workers as an example. Let's say they drove their trucks into the building intentionally and destroyed a freaking building. Okay, we get that you're going on strike, but you can't do that. You can't draw, or let's say they put cement in somebody's lunch or something like that. You can't do that. That's egregious behavior. And that does not fall under your right to strike. You can't just be like, well, I put cement in somebody's Subway because we're on strike. Well, you can't. I mean, you have the right to go on strike. You don't have, you get the idea. Bringing your cement trucks back to the facility and then just leaving it running as a gesture of goodwill to help the cement be preserved longer, that's not egregious behavior. And by the way, who would rule on such a thing, whether there was egregious behavior or not? Well, the labor board would, not the Supreme Court, the labor board. So what Glacier Northwest, the company in question here, what they tried to do first, they tried to go to the Washington State Court. And the state court said, this is up to the labor board. If you're trying to claim egregious behavior here, which, by the way, it doesn't look like there was any, so good luck. But this is for the labor board to decide. This falls under federal labor laws. Take it to the labor board. But somehow this company was able to do some sort of maneuvering and get it to the Supreme Court instead. Why did they want to get it to the Supreme Court? Well, because the Supreme Court is notoriously anti-worker, and the Supreme Court has nothing to do with the law. The Supreme Court is a complete scam, and they know that. Here's a piece that I think kind of sums it up pretty well, too. Glacier Northwest. Conservative SCOTUS justices want to make the right to strike meaningless. This is from a blog called Balls and Strikes. Could a state tell the union, don't go on strike except the end of the day, ? This was one of the questions that Justice Sonia Sotomayor asked at the oral argument this week in Glacier Northwest versus the Teamsters, a Supreme Court case about whether companies can sue unions for alleged property destruction that occurs during the strike. The question gets at the danger of a sweeping court opinion that would give employers the power to hold workers accountable for any profit losses. Throughout the oral argument, the liberal justices sounded the alarm. This is the case about the early morning events. Okay, so this breaks down the case and what happened. The Washington Supreme Court, that's the Washington State Court, turned away the suit, holding that work stoppage was protected activity under the National Labor Relations Act, and the federal law protects workers' rights to organize. So they're saying that this should be up to the labor board. And the timeline wasn't fast enough for them, so they got it up to the Supreme Court. So here's the deal. If the Supreme Court rules in favor of the companies, this will really crush the ability of anyone to strike. And that's the thing. You have a constitutional right to strike, and it'd be hard for them to mess with that. So what they're going to do is they're going to do everything around it to basically make striking impossible. And this has been going on for years. It's already so hard to strike in the United States. Why? Well, because most people don't get living wages. So they're 1 or 2 paychecks away from going under. 2, because healthcare is tied to a job. And 3, because, they make everything in favor of the company. Unions have been defanged for 60 years and counting. A lot of times, the people who are supposed to represent workers don't. So the cards are already stacked up against workers so much. This would add another layer of, oh, and by the way, we need to worry about legal fees because there's a good chance they're going to be able to go after us in court over any losses they incur. And where's that going to stop? Well, maybe a bunch of baristas are going to go on strike at Starbucks. Howard Schultz is going to say, oh, I'm going to sue you for the profits I lost that day. Because nobody was making the coffee, we didn't get any, this is the revenue we usually make in a day. You owe that now. And who's going to have more legal power? Howard Schultz or Starbucks workers? Who's going to have an easier time in court? So this is huge. This is huge. So, this is a huge one. And if this goes through, it is going to really crush the ability to strike in this country. And you can't help but notice the timing here. You can't help but notice the timing. Because guess what? We have had the biggest labor uprising that we've seen in about 80 years in this country. The system is completely crumbling. It's all crumbling around us, folks. And people are frustrated. They're fed up. You can't travel by air. The airlines are a mess. You can't travel by rail. Did you hear about the people that were waiting for 30 hours over on Amtrak? It's all crumbling. It's falling apart at the seams. And labor is standing up and they're demanding that they get treated right. They're saying, we've had enough. We're not going to take it anymore. So they need to do something about that. They being the powers that be. They need to do something about that. So they're getting their buddies in the Supreme Court to help. And if this goes through, this is going to really crush the ability to strike. It's going to make something that is already so freaking difficult that much more difficult. And of course, it's at a time where we're seeing more striking activity than we have seen in decades. Of course, it's during that time. We're seeing striking in all of the labor sectors. We're seeing strikes in academia. We're seeing strikes among grad students. We're seeing strikes among nurses. We're seeing strikes among people in the theatrical and stage industry. We're seeing, so many industries are all saying enough is enough. Teachers, the list goes on and on. So they got to put a stop to this. They got to put a stop to this. So let's end with a little bit of good news. We need a little bit of good news. And I got some for you. This is pretty cool. So you guys know me. I like music. I used to skateboard as a kid. And I like when somebody kind of uses their platform and uses their resources to do something positive. I think that's a pretty good thing. And that's happening in Montana with the help of Pearl Jam, and in particular their bassist, Jeff Emmett. So Jeff Emmett is building skate parks in Montana. That's where he's from. And let me see. So Emmett from Havre, Montana. I'm not sure if I'm saying that. Havre. I'm not sure how you say the town, but it's Havre, Montana. He has built 25 skate parks. As of the publication of this article from Awful Announcing, it is now over 30, by the way. But he's built over 30 skate parks across his home state. The usual cost for a park is around $50,000, but there's no fees for anyone to use them. He's built several of these parks in Native American reservations, which have had particularly high suicide rates and particularly low infrastructure investments. As he tells Carrillo, who interviewed him here, the goal is to have more world-class skate parks per capita here than anywhere. That's the goal. I grew up here. I'm trying to bring that thing I've witnessed in my travel back to these kind of people. So he's trying to bring skate parks to underserved rural areas, Native American reservations, places that are very struggling. He's trying to give people, I wanted to say young people, but really people of all ages skateboard. I have not been on a skateboard in well over 20 years, and I think if I got on one anytime soon, I would not. It would not go well for me. So I think it's fair to say that mostly young people skateboard, but hey, you see people of all ages that still do it. I have friends that are pushing 50 that still skateboard. So yeah, don't want to overgeneralize there. And here's another update. As of November 29th, 2022, Jeff over in Pearl Jam is getting some help from Blink 182 and the Pixies. Pearl Jam bassist. This is from the Everett Post. Everett's a community out near Seattle. Pearl Jam bassist Jeff Emmett has teamed up with Blink 182 and the Pixies to help support his Montana Pool Service. So that's the organization that builds these skate parks. Both the All the Small Things outfit and the Where Is My Mind rockers have contributed signature skateboard decks, which will help fund the creation of 2 more parks set to be built this year in 2023. Now, the decks are already on sale. You can check that out. 62000 Emmett and the MPS have built over 30 skate parks for Montana's rural and native communities. So here's another thing Emmett has to say about this. Jeff Emmett from Pearl Jam. I hope I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. Thanks to MPS, there is a new generation of rippers out there creating their own scene and style, an opportunity to express themselves in a unique way that would otherwise not be possible. So a little bit of good news for you, and good news that pertains to something near and dear to my heart, which is music. And, I'll say this too. I grew up in a place that did not have a skate park. That was not something that was prominent in my little community in Western Pennsylvania. And I feel like I probably would have stayed out of some trouble if I had a skate park. I really do. I think because here's the deal. When I was in middle school, I had a band. We were a little punk band, and we were called Open Till 2. And it was ironic because we were all like 13 and we had a name that sort of hinted at the time that bars close. They're like, well, that's kind of ironic that you guys can't go to bars because you're like 12, but you have a name about the closing time at a bar. And it'd be funny when we would do shows, like we would see some of the other bands and they would see us and they'd be like, you guys are open till 2? And like, yeah, we're open till 2. They're like, we figured that you guys would be like in your 30s or something. And we're like, no, we're 12. My mom just dropped us off in her minivan, which is true. My mom would drop us off in the minivan because the minivan was the only vehicle big enough to fit band equipment. Anyway, fun times. And yeah, but the reason we were called Open Till 2 was not because of bars. The reason we were called Open Till 2 is because the Taco Bell parking lot in my community was where we would skateboard. And the Taco Bell was open till 2. And there was this big sign that said open till 2. We would skateboard there until they kicked us out, which they did every day. And then when they kicked us out, we would go have band practice. So what I'm saying is, if I lived in a place with a skate park, it might have kept me out of some trouble. So shout out to Jeff Emmett and shout out to everyone who's benefiting from those skate parks. It's a really cool thing. Blue8961, what's up? How are you? Thank you so much for your super chat contribution. You helped keep the show on the air. And you say, keep fighting, everyone. Amen to you, Blue8961. Happy New Year. Thank you so much. And thank you for the super chat. You do help keep the show on the air. Folks, good to be back. Good to be back. Now, for those of you catching this live, I will be starting the patron stream in just a minute here, which please do hang out. That's the more casual stream where we just sort of chat it up. And I do have some updates, though. I'm going to be giving a kind of State of the Union 2023. This is the first official Get Your News On With Ron of 2023. So I'm going to be talking about, what folks can expect in this coming year. But in the meantime, tour dates, I got them. January 28th, Tucson, Arizona. Do not wait. Get your tickets now. RonPlacone.com. That is a stand-up show and the premiere screening of my short film, Loner. I have a film out called Loner. The only way you've seen it already is if you're a patron. I released it early for patrons. I've not released it into the world yet, but it's going to premiere in Tucson, Arizona on January 28th. And then after that, I'm going to release it to the world And it's a pilot. Like, my goal is that it gets picked up and made into a series. So we'll see. And maybe I don't know. Maybe I'll be able to crowdfund the series. It's tough to say this early on, but basically, it is a series. I even know how it ends already. Um, but the first episode is going to be released very, very soon. And the premiere happens in Tucson, Arizona. So don't wait, Tucson. Get your tickets, romflacone.com. That's also a stand-up show. The film's only 12 minutes long. So it's a stand-up show, and we watch the film too. It's going to be a fun event. Romflacone.com for tickets. February 10th, April 14th, and May 12th, I will be in Los Angeles, California at the Glendale Room, cool venue in Glendale, Friday night, 10 p.m. Get tickets and information at romflacone.com. That's going to be a fun show. I'm going to be premiering my 2023 hour that I'm hoping to take to festivals this year. And I'll have more tour dates soon. Madison, I'm coming. Minneapolis, I'm coming. Still working on some Midwest dates. I'm trying to get Detroit, trying to get Indianapolis, trying to get Chicago, working on all those. And I'm hoping to do the Edinburgh Fringe Fest this year. So I will have pretty much within the next handful of weeks, hopefully by February at the latest, I will have all 2023 tour dates locked in. And but yeah, still finalizing everything here as the year has just begun. But guys, and romflacone.com, of course, for all information and tickets. Guys, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Blue8961, for the super chat. For everyone catching this live, stick around. We'll be kicking off the patron stream in just a moment here as I restart another stream. And for everyone checking out the podcast later, please leave us a 5-star review, would you? Leave us a 5-star review. And to everyone, if you want to support this show on the sustainability end, patreon.com/romflacone for a give what you can level. You get all kinds of cool perks. And it's a fun Patreon. And it's for a give what you can level. It's so whatever you feel comfortable giving. If you're thinking I won't miss $1 a month, that's all it takes. All right, folks. Thank you so much for being here. Good to be back. Happy New Year. And I will I'll see you next week, if not sooner. And in the meantime, you know the drill. Lucy, she says meow, and I say peace, love, and a general strike.